Hello, fellow Lords of Chaos. Welcome to this week's episode of Comics with Friends, the bi-weekly podcast where two best buds get together, read a comic, talk about what they love about it, what they didn't like, and tell some funny jokes. I am your host, Ethan, joined by my best bud and co-host, Mason. And this episode, we are covering Dr. Fate, the 4-issue miniseries written by J.M. DeMatteis and drawn by Keith Giffen. What's up, bud?
None much. I'm gonna have to be honest with you on this one. Okay. So I read this and it felt like an acid trip as a comic book.
Yeah.
I might need you to hold my hand going through this a little bit because multiple times in my notes, I was like, I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
I was very, the thing is there was moments where I was like, okay, I think I understand what's happening now. And then it loses me.
And then it loses
And
you.
I'm like, what the fuck is going on? I don't know what's going on. And then, oh, okay, this is what's happening. Nope, this is not what's happening.
No.
What the fuck is going on?
No.
So, yeah. I overall liked it, but I was confused like a good 75% of the time.
Yeah. So a little bit of reasoning behind picking this story, because I just kind of told you, hey, pick a story in the list. And you picked this one. And it's because I was looking for some Dr. Fate series, and I was like, there's not really a good starting point with him. And then I saw this, and I was like, no, fuck it, I'll pick this one.
Yeah.
And I don't think this was a good jumping on point, because they're saying things that I'm like, yeah, sure, okay.
Yeah, so this might be just a poor choice of book on our part, but still, I liked it. It was interesting to see the character, because really the only thing I know him from is fucking Injustice 2.
Yeah.
Fucking, because he's a character in that game.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, I've kind of heard him mentioned here and there, but I had really no idea who he was. So I was like, when you were like, pick a book in the playlist that you have, I was like, okay, Dr. Fate.
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like I was on drugs half the time.
Yeah, that's kind of what you get when it comes to characters like Dr. Fate. Just a little bit of backstory. So Dr. Fate is, of course, DC's essentially Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
He is the magic-based character that you think of when it comes to, the mystic arts and all that stuff. And he's all about order and all that. He is... So the original wearer of the Helm of Fate, or the Helmet of Naboo, whatever you want to call it, is Kent Nelson, who is this super old dude from the comics.
I did gather that.
Yeah. Now, there's a little bit of weirdness with his character, because Dr. Fate is technically from Earth 2. So he's from the comic book universe.
Yeah.
Because he's a part of the JSA. They had established that the JSA was the Earth 2 version of the Justice League. Mm-hmm. Well, this story takes place right after Crisis on Infinite Earths, the first Crisis. And in that, they had destroyed the multiverse, said there was only one Earth, and they had taken characters from Earth 2 and put them onto Earth 1 and completely rewrote their entire origins to make it to where they were always from Earth 1. So characters like Dr. Fate, Jay Garrick, The Flash, Alan Scott, Green Lantern, and Power Girl, they were rewritten to have always been from Earth 1. Black Canary, they had established that the Black Canary from the JSA was actually the first Black Canary, and the Black Canary that exists now, that's banging Green Arrow,
is taking up the mantle.
It's her daughter, but they had also fucked that up and said, no, they're the same person, technically.
Oh. Okay.
That's we'll have to get into it at a later time. So as you can probably tell from this story, obviously we'll get into it here in just a minute. This was DC's attempt at updating the character.
Yeah.
Making him a little bit different. Granted, not too different, I guess, because his powers stay the same.
Yeah. Really, the only thing I managed to gather from this drug-fueled comic was it was a story really about passing on the mantle.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah. I don't know if they did that successfully, or at least their full intentions.
I mean, they did it. Because it is a new person as Dr. Fate rather than Kent Nelson now.
Yes.
Kind of.
Well, oh my God. We'll talk about it. Yeah. I sent a text to Mason earlier this week after reading it, letting him know partial of my feelings about this story. So we'll get into it.
I got off work and I read it. And I was kind of tired, but I was like, I'm going to read this, do my notes, and then I'll go to bed. Mm-hmm. The entire time I was reading it, I just was like, I feel like someone has drugged me because I am having such a, don't get me wrong, visually, it's very interesting.
Yeah, Keith Giffen, I think, does a really good job in this book.
I was very interested visually of what was happening with the panels, but as far as the narrative combined with the visuals, I was like, I have no fucking clue what the thread, the plot line is here, really.
Right. It does lose itself just a bit. So I feel like with that, we should probably just get straight into it.
Yeah.
So this book just kicks off straight into action.
Yeah, it just drops you right in.
Yeah, Dr. Fate, Kent Nelson, shows up in what I presume is Gotham.
Yes.
Because of stuff that happens on later. And he is instantly in combat with a Lord of Chaos named Typhon. Now, of course, Dr. Fate, or Naboo, as he is called by humans, is a Lord of Order, who are basically people who are in charge of keeping, or gods or entities that are in charge of keeping the balance of the world, that kind of deal. He instantly gets into combat. Apparently, he's been tracking down Typhon and his children for a while. And a pretty, admittedly pretty cool fight ensues, and they fight each other, and it's very, even the fight is really trippy because all kinds of shit is just going off with magic and all that. And Dr. Fate gets the upper hand and is about to land basically the killing blow on Typhon when the other Lords of Order essentially call him into their realm.
Yeah.
Basically abduct him.
Yeah, they basically save Typhon, essentially.
Yeah, which is like, man, are you fucking serious?
Yeah. See, in this moment, when he gets summoned by the other Lords of Order, was immediately when everything started to lose me. Where I was like, I don't know what the fuck is happening, because
it's very abstract, the way that it's drawn as well.
The art is abstract, and there's really a lot of, and it happens throughout all four of these issues, there is a lot of just floating speech bubbles that are connected to nothing.
They're connected to nothing, and the issue that I found going later on into it is that one character's speech bubble will start as a certain color
and then change,
and then just change into a different color.
Yeah,
which to me doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense, and it made me so confused on who was talking.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I think the only consistent one was Naboo, with
kinda, yeah,
for the most part.
Well, I wouldn't even say that, because when he first starts fighting Typhon, it's blue, it has a blue outline. But then when he gets pulled into the Lords of Order realm, it turns to yellow.
Oh yeah.
So even then, to me it's a little.
Yeah, and I understand it was probably an artistic choice of some kind.
Yeah.
But it just made it so hard to follow. I cannot stress enough how just confused I was.
Yeah.
It was literally like one of those situations where like I read the first issue, was super confused. Read the second issue, it kind of made sense of the first issue, but then everything else in the second issue also confused. And then the third issue did the same thing where it made more sense of the issue previous to it, in which by far I think the most egregious out of the 4 issues, the third issue really fucking lost me. And then the fourth issue does the same thing, makes somewhat sense of the previous one, and then
by the end of it, you're like,
quite lose me. Like it was like, I think I know what's going on.
Yeah, I think I know what's gonna happen. Yeah, no. So Dr. Fate gets pulled into the Lords of Order's realm, and they are essentially, telling him like, you've forgotten who you are. You're a Lord of Order. You shouldn't be getting involved in these mortals, plights. And they even bring up the crisis. They make a very quick mention of it, which is kind of weird because in Crisis, now you have not read Crisis, so you don't know what happens in it.
Nope.
You do know from things that I have mentioned some tidbits about it. Well, a byproduct of the Crisis event, the first one at least, when the multiverse was destroyed, everyone's memory of the multiverse was erased.
Oh,
so anyone who knew that the multiverse existed, so superheroes and villains, forgot that the multiverse existed, except for one person, and that is a character named Psychopirate. And his ass is in Arkham Asylum because he's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
He's the only person who remembers that Crisis ever happened and that there was a multiverse. In this, they straight up mentioned the Crisis event, which to me is weird.
Would the Lords of Order not be kind of outside of that and maybe no?
Maybe. I don't know much about the Lords of Order, and let me tell you, in this book, they don't fucking tell you much about them either.
Yeah. Well, so like when they're talking to Dr. Fate, they also start bringing up this cycle with these different ages. And from what I gathered, I could be wrong. There's a very high chance that I'm wrong. Is that the present day of the time period of the comic is like the last age, like the Kali Yuga or something like that, which is the age that is tainted by chaos.
Yeah.
And they're saying that Dr. Fate or Naboo should just allow Typhon to succeed and destroy the world, essentially, so that
start over.
The cycle starts over in the first age, which is supposed to be this age of unprecedented clarity and purity, and like where civilizations are like at their peak and golden age and everything that. Right. And Dr. Fate is essentially like, I'm not fucking doing that.
Yeah,
he's all these innocent people, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, you would sacrifice the lives of millions just to, start over.
So I think that's what they were saying.
Yeah, I guess that's what they were saying.
I think.
Yeah.
Because like also the panel layout of this too sometimes kind of confused me as well, in which direction I should be flowing with.
And maybe that's intentional because you do, especially because you just mentioned the part where they explain the different ages.
Yeah.
The way the panel is lined out, I almost interpreted it in my head as echoes. Like it, instead of it being like normal talking, it was voices talking over each other, like different kinds of voices. And, maybe that's intentional, maybe it's not, but I can definitely see that. But I don't know. I think it might have been intentional.
Yeah. I mean, I think I got that.
You're gonna hear a lot of "I think" in this episode.
I spent a good deal of time
just looking at the page.
like thinking about what they were trying to say. And also with the way it's written, the first time it says yugas as like the different ages, I definitely thought it said Yusas, and I thought Jar Jar Binks had entered the chat. And
You's a Lord of Order. Annie.
but yeah, so I'm pretty sure that's what they're talking about. But now Nabu, I think says basically fuck off.
Yeah, he does.
And the other Lords of Order are like, you act like you have a choice, and then pop his dome.
Yeah, they pop the helmet off. I thought they fucking popped his goddamn head off.
Yeah,
I thought he was dead.
I thought they fucking blew his head off.
Preface this for future chapter. There's a lot of scenes where I'm like, oh my God, they just killed him. And another character says, no, that's not what happened. And I'm like, excuse me? So, we'll get into it. Because you know the scene I'm fucking talking about.
There's like weird shit that happens in this.
Yeah.
That I'm like, dude, whoever drew this and also wrote this was high on something. I don't know what.
It's the 80s, so they probably were.
Yeah, a little bit of the devil's dandruff.
Probably. So yeah, they pop his helmet off and they show Kent Nelson, and they essentially say like, your host is weak and dying. Like, you can't keep up this fight, and you know it's best to just give in.
Yeah.
And that is when we cut back to, you know, the material realm, and we are met with essentially our two main characters of the story.
Yeah.
Eric and Linda Strauss. Eric is a 10-year-old boy, and Linda is his like late 20s, early 30s stepmom.
Yeah.
And we get this backstory that Eric comes from like a rich family. His dad was super rich, but he was also a very abusive man, and he's super old too.
And I think Linda, she had like some kind of fame or popularity, if I'm not mistaken, and married Eric's dad and found out firsthand how bad he was. Yeah. And I think that correlates with how kind of batshit insane she is.
Yeah, you're gonna find out very quickly my opinions on Linda by the way that she talks. Yeah. And her thought process.
It's a little bit kind of like giving like Gollum.
Oh,
a little bit.
Yeah. So Eric's father dies, and Linda is trying her best to socialize Eric. And she takes him to the park and wants him to go play with other boys. And Eric is essentially like, you know that they'll make fun of me because they don't understand me. None of them do. Yeah. And, you know, Linda essentially, you know, she has him go, and she essentially is like, I do understand. They'll never understand you, but you have to try. You know, you're such a sweet kid. You're so mature for your age. Like an old soul in a young body. Yeah. We get that backstory of...
Really harps on the whole old soul in a young body thing.
That is something that will come back into play. Yeah. And while she's smoking a cig, you know...
Reminiscing on her life.
Yeah, just life. She notices that Eric is gone. Yep. And she is chasing after him. And we see that a trench coat individual has... absconded with Eric.
Scooped him up.
And we completely cut away from those characters to Arkham fucking Asylum. Yep. Where that threw me off. Yeah. Where we are met with essentially our main antagonist, Dr. Stoner. What a crazy name.
You know why they named him that? Because they were high as hell when they fucking wrote this, dude.
100%.
I'm telling you, man.
I mean, Dr. Stoner himself just looks kind of crazy looking.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he doesn't look like he belongs in this world. And maybe that's because he's already technically a host to Typhon. Yeah. We find out that Dr. Stoner is, you know, a host of a Lord of Chaos. And he is the current runner, or the warden, I guess you would say, warden of...
Like a head doctor.
Yeah, head psychiatrist.
Yeah.
And you find out, now I think you find this out later in the story, that he actually was a very good person.
Yeah.
Who was very compassionate and wanted to help all of his patients.
But he kind of had like a mental break.
Yeah, because he gave too much of himself.
Yeah.
That's the way they explain it.
And that mental break is how Typhon was able to use him as a host.
Yeah.
Essentially.
It's just kind of crazy, some of the imagery they show in this scene, because it does show him kind of walking past cells. At one point you see the Joker.
Yeah.
Like just...
And it's filled with like Hobbs.
Yeah, just laughing constantly. And
you see that twice.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. And that it's a very quick scene because we immediately cut to a cemetery, and it focuses on a tombstone that becomes very prominent. Obviously, this ties into the mythology of Dr. Fate. We see a tombstone that says Inza, and for you, obviously, you don't know who that is until you read this book.
Yeah.
Inza is his wife, Dr. Fate's wife, or Kent Nelson's wife. We find out, I didn't know that this was a thing, or maybe this is only a thing with this book, that Naboo manifests
in his body
as a giant fucking mouth on his stomach.
I don't know if it's like a
normal thing,
because I think it might be a thing where Naboo is like keeping Nelson alive, and so he has to like essentially be a part of Nelson.
Yeah, I guess.
That was my take.
Yeah.
But he's a giant fucking mouth on Nelson's stomach that essentially looks like it's constantly breathing fire.
Yeah. And I will say something I did like about this is they do not shy away from the idea that Naboo is not a good guy.
Yes.
Naboo is purely only driven by blunt logic. In a sense,
he's basically putting his job as a Lord of Order before compassion, before any kind of feelings. It's like if people, which is weird considering how defiant Naboo was towards the other Lords of Order.
Yeah,
about letting the age recycle.
Yeah,
but he's very like, if this does not benefit the grand scheme of things, then I don't.
It doesn't. It's not important.
It's unimportant.
Yeah, it's less than.
Yeah,
you know.
So that's kind of weird.
I agree. Essentially, Naboo and Nelson explain to, Eric that.
just the idea that Eric just got fucking kidnapped by Nelson and brought to like this creepy ass like dungeon base.
Yeah, it is creepy. Like, I'm sorry, this looks suspect.
It does.
This looks especially.
Someone needs to check Nelson's hard drive.
Yeah, for real. But Nelson and Naboo are explaining to Eric that Nelson is dying.
Yeah.
Like, he is too old. He's not going to last much longer. And a new host needs to be selected. And Eric is like, essentially like, I'm just a boy. Like, I can't be a hero. Yeah. And that's when Naboo is like, well, don't worry about that. I can help you. And he shoots him with his fire spit.
He's like, have you ever seen the movie 13 Going on 30 with Jennifer Garner?
Yeah. And he transforms Eric into a full-grown, butt-ass naked man. And the first thing that you see is naked Eric, and then a shadowy Nelson with the smile of Naboo just saying, good, now we can begin the training. What the fuck? That is so weird.
It's even weirder when, maybe I got the wrong impression, but when Linda sees...
No, you did not.
Okay, because when Linda sees Eric for the first time as a grown-ass man, I swear to God, there's like a lip bite, and she's like, God damn.
We'll get into it. Don't worry. So Linda is back at her and Eric's apartment, and she is just distraught, devastated. She brings up like, he has an old soul and an old body. That's like the first thing she says.
Yeah. I will say it also is established that she kind of was using Eric as like a emotional coping mechanism.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. Naboo or Dr. Fate shows up and tells Linda, like, Eric will be back.
Yeah.
And they immediately rush in and find Typhon, who is this massive hulking kaiju. See, I will say this is kind of the confusing part about their fights is Typhon is this massive, like, he towers over the city.
Yeah.
Does no one else see this?
See, I have no idea. You're asking the wrong man.
Yeah. Like, he is massive.
Yeah.
And if this is happening in Gotham, where's Batman?
We know
where Batman is. We know where Batman is. He's hanging out with the lame Justice League. That's what he's doing.
When we get there. Okay. All right.
So they start their fucking fight, and fucking Eric is not in it. He is scared because he's still just a boy. Now he's aged up to be about his like mid-20s at this point. But he's still like a boy who's never fought demons before.
Yeah. And he's still fighting because he's scared and confused. He's still fighting against Naboo having like full control.
Because a whole part of Dr. Fate's power is that when you put on the helmet, Naboo takes over your body. Like, you become a host.
Yeah.
And Eric is not having that. And so they begin to lose the fight. And, you know, Typhon essentially makes Dr. Fate or Naboo and Eric disconnect.
Yeah.
And throws Eric to the ground. He actually ends up getting found by some park rangers. And
Eric's lost it.
Yeah, Eric's lost it. He's insane. Dr. Stoner is there because obviously he is a part of all this. He is the host for Typhon.
Yeah.
And he essentially makes it to where Eric is like an escaped patient
from Arkham.
Yeah, from Arkham. And that's when we come back to Arkham. We get another Joker scene with the laughs.
Yeah.
Joker looks crazy in this, by the way. It's so simple, but it's crazy.
He looks deranged.
Yeah, it looks wild. Inside of Eric's like cell is Stoner and Typhon, and they're essentially like torturing him mentally.
Yeah, they're like gassing him.
Yeah, and that's basically the end of issue 1 is him getting put in the asylum.
Yeah, and basically Dr. Stoner's like, I'm just doing this for shits and giggles at this point.
Yeah, like I've already won.
Well, in reality, he's trying to get
Naboo's powers
because he's asking like where the helmet and the amulet are.
So issue 2 opens up with Nelson at this castle, or I think it's the Tower of Fate.
I think so as well.
And he goes into this tomb with this sarcophagus, and we get this backstory of Nelson, his father, taking him to I believe it's Egypt, or it's Sumer. It's like a Sumerian expedition and archaeology. Yeah, his father was an archaeologist when he was just a boy at that time. That's when they found the helmet of fate. Naboo vaporizes Nelson's father, and then does essentially the exact same thing that they did to Eric Strauss, where it aged him up, took over.
But the major difference was that Nelson, like, accepted it.
Yeah, he felt as though it was his responsibility to be Dr. Fate. And he talks about how he met Inza or Ainza. I don't know how you pronounce her name.
Yeah.
But either way, Dr. Fate bestowed the same, like, longevity of life or immortality to his wife as well. So both of them never grew old, but Nelson essentially explains that, like, well, yes, physically our bodies never grew old. That did not shield our minds from the effects of time, such as dementia, schizophrenia, Alzheimer's.
And also all the just fucking horrors.
And all the horrors, that like, fucking Dr. Fate has to deal with on a daily basis.
You're dealing with individuals called, like, the Lords of Chaos.
Yeah. Gonna be a little bit tricky right there.
I mean, like, your life is a living acid trip. Like,
yeah. So he essentially says, like, you know, she grew insane And eventually I just had to let her go, and she died.
She died.
And ever since then, he's been wanting to go as well, but Naboo obviously
Won't let him.
Won't let him, yeah. So after we get that nice little, kind of monologue of his backstory to kind of tell you who Kent Nelson is.
See, it's moments like that in this story that I'm like, oh, okay, I can follow this. I kind of understand what's going on. Mm-hmm. But the moment, like, honestly, kind of true to the character, the moment Typhon's on the fucking panel,
it just kind of
it just goes
wacky.
off the fucking rails.
Yeah, it's just wacky as shit.
It's wild. It's literally chaos on the page.
And again, maybe that's intentional, and that could be on like me, where like I'm getting lost easily, but that's just because of the way I read.
Yeah,
and I'm not used to that, and that could be completely intentional by the artist and writer. Yeah. And if it is, good on them, because they succeeded in what they were trying to do. Is the execution necessarily good? That's up for personal debate, depending on how you read.
Yeah, that's also just coming down to subjective.
Yeah,
like how art is subjective.
Right. So
I'm with you though. I feel like even if that was the intention, like, kudos, you fucking nailed it, because I was sure shit confused.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel like even if that is kind of your objective, you need to even have your most average reader be able to follow.
Yeah,
if that
I
makes
agree.
Sense.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
But
so after we get that nice little backstory, we cut back to Arkham Asylum, where again Eric is just absolutely, he has lost it, and he's an insane asylum patient, and Stoner, he essentially gives his like backstory to Eric, where he's like, oh, I used to be like you. I used to be compassionate and caring and stuff, and all of that held me back.
Yeah.
And then I met, Lord Typhon, and, I will say there is something about Lord Typhon that I like, where whenever Stoner says Typhon's name, Typhon says, "Don't speak my name."
Yeah.
And instantly Stoner's like, "My apologies." Like it's so very submissive.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I just really like that aspect.
I also I do like so I like Typhon because even though I was talking about how like whenever he's on the panel, like shit just gets weird, but I do like the fact that they kind of like his whole shtick in this run is just a mouth with sharp teeth.
Yeah.
That's like 90% of everything.
Yeah.
But for some reason, whoever the artist just seemed to make that super fucking interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
But I at this moment also, Typhon's talking about how like chaos is winning.
Yeah.
Like chaos,
like he knows they're on the up and up.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons Stoner gives Eric of why he ended up like working, being the host for Typhon, is like because I'm joining the winning side and everything like that. Some of that's probably Typhon's influence.
Oh, 100%.
But every time they kept going, on like chaos is winning and everything, my mind just instantly Warhammer.
Yeah.
Like,
how about you put a fucking Space Marine in there? Put a Grey Knight in there and see what happens.
No one's coming out alive.
No one's coming out. So yeah, they're interrogating him on where the amulet and the helmet are, because they really want the power of fate. And we cut back to Linda, who is awoken by a nightmare, and she
calls out Eric's name in her sleep. By the way.
Yeah. She essentially is like, Eric is like, at first she's telling herself that Eric's gone, I'll never see him again, and then she kind of snaps herself out of it and says, no, he's alive. I have to find him. Now, this is kind of what I was talking about, where speech bubbles / thought bubbles, narration stuff kind of get wonky, because her narration block starts out green, and then it turns to pink, and then it turns to yellow, and then it turns back to green, and
then pink again, and then orange.
Yeah, and the reason why that's so confusing to me is that I associate the thought blocks or the narration blocks with characters.
Yes.
When Superman is narrating, it is blue. Yeah. When Batman is narrating, it is black. When Green Lantern's narrating, it's green.
Yeah.
So when you take characters, especially like Dr. Fate, who they do this same thing to him as well in this story, and they change the colors multiple times, I don't know who's talking and I can't follow along.
I would say in this moment, it's a little bit easier because she is technically the only character in the panels. Like, there's no one else.
I guess.
But I understand your point because it's egregious later on
Yeah.
in the other issues. But I think, at least with this, it's showing the fact that Linda's fucking crazy. Because it's kind of like the Deadpool thing, right?
Yeah.
Where the multiple, the way they do the narration bubbles are different to show like kind of the different, I guess, attitudes of the voices in the head.
Yeah.
And I get the same feeling from this, but I wish they would have rather done like maybe like the bubble is a different shape or something like that, but kept the color consistent.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I don't know. Either way, she gets up. She essentially talks herself into leaving their apartment because she believes that Eric is alive and she knows where he is. She gets in her car and she starts fucking driving.
Yeah.
And at the asylum, we get this absolutely wacky image. Well, first off, we see all of like these Arkham patients.
Yeah.
Who are just terrified for their lives, except for Joker, who's just sleeping soundly,
Laughing.
And then we get a butt-ass naked Stoner, Dr. Stoner, hovering over
His
assistant's body, who was introduced earlier in this story, but she's
Sheila.
not, yeah, she's not really important.
I will say I do like, so when they cut to Arkham and the panels cut to each villain in Batman's, because it's essentially Batman's rogue gallery.
Yeah.
I do like the fact that they use the villains to represent, because as they're showing this, Typhon's like giving kind of like an inner monologue, I guess, of what Typhon feeds off of.
Yeah.
And each villain kind of represents one of the different avenues that Typhon feeds off emotion and stuff like that, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
I did really like that. But yeah. And then, as you say, fucking Stoner's hovering over Sheila's dead body and basically describes how fucked Typhon is and Chaos is.
Yeah.
Because even at one point, he's like, and Typhon told me to basically do the deed with a dead body.
Yeah.
And he's like, and I did, because
that's what Typhon
that's
wanted.
what Typhon wanted.
Yeah.
So Chaos, not good.
No. Yeah. No shit.
Not good.
No shit.
Just in case you were on the fence about that, Chaos is not okay.
Yeah, and there is just some absolutely wild shit going on in this chapter.
Yeah, see, this is where the fucking acid trip shit
yeah,
happening.
This stuff is just wild, where there's like this cloud of miasma traveling through the walls, going into the rooms of these patients and like killing them or like sucking out their like life essence,
and they're forming like gas that has faces.
Yeah,
and like
it looks just absolutely
and
wild.
Then it goes into like Eric's cell and it's like taunting him and torturing him. It's fucking weird.
Yeah. And at the last possible minute, Naboo shows up in Eric's like cell, like basically blows it the fuck up.
Yeah.
And fights Typhon again.
Yep.
And they just duke it out. He fucking unibeams them somehow.
Well, so from what I gather, they're Typhon's like using like a madness beam, like trying to like fucking just cause Dr. Fate to go crazy, essentially. And like for the most part, Typhon has like the upper hand upper hand for a lot of it. You know, kind of doing the typical, like he's monologuing as he's defeating Dr. Fate. You know, Dr. Fate's on the fucking down spiral.
Yeah.
And then he, like you said, he fucking unibeams him. He fucking Kamehamehas the fuck out of Typhon.
It seems like he won.
But then Typhon's still alive
inside of Stoner's body.
Inside of Stoner, and Fate confronts Stoner, and then Dr. Fate gets fucked up by Typhon again.
Yeah, they essentially tear Dr. Fate's or Naboo's soul out of the helmet.
Yeah.
And Typhon is like, oh, I did it. I finally won. I have the amulet and the helmet. And he puts it on.
Yeah.
And he essentially becomes the new Dr. Fate.
Yeah.
And Naboo is like, oh, it's done. Like, we should just give up at this point. And while they're kind of in their final moments of like arguing and, you know, basically saying like, oh, it's over, chaos has won, blah, 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 Linda shows up at the cemetery and finds Nelson, the thing that she's been drawn to, and begins to help him. And she's like, you're going to help me find Eric. And at the end of issue 2, we get this narration saying, you know, they think they've beaten me. They think I'm useless, that without the helmet and amulet, I'm no threat to them. They're wrong. And it shows Eric, who is completely normal.
Yeah, he's
like, he's back to normal. He's leaving Arkham Asylum.
He seems completely composed, like he's been 25, you know, naturally.
Yeah.
You know, like,
it's weird.
Also, how the fuck did Linda know where to find Kent Nelson?
I think they mentioned briefly that it's like a feeling. Like, she just feels like she has to go there.
Oh, so it's like
the Force.
So it's like multiple times Kent Nelson basically goes like, the Lords of Orders drew my father to the helmet. So it's essentially like that.
Yeah, essentially.
Like the Lords of Order are essentially drawing Linda to fucking Kent Nelson.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I think. So issue 3 opens with Dr. Stoner, who is now Dr. Fate, with the powers of Typhon as well, flying over the planet Earth, spreading madness and pestilence and chaos all across, doing all just kinds of crazy ass shit, speaking into the ears of like politicians.
Supposedly Typhon's the reason like some real world tragedies happen.
Yeah, because they bring up like Midtown Sniper Kills 20, tensions in the Middle East, you know, that kind of stuff, some kind of wacky shit.
Well, it to me, it's like, I understand probably like bringing in real world events and stuff.
You gotta keep in mind, it's the 80s.
It's the 80s, but like, I don't know, like like from reading it in 2024 and you know, have seen those events, like, not because I was alive, but like, you know, like,
you see the aftermath of those
of those events. It's kind of like, I wouldn't have put that.
Yeah, I would. You know, like, yeah. I 100% agree. I wouldn't have done that.
I wouldn't have done that decision. But
trust me, there's a lot of books from like the 80s where they bring up stuff. Like, I know I believe it is Death in the Family, they bring up the Ayatollah, which
I have no fucking clue.
You'll find out.
Okay. All right.
I'm gonna save it for when we do Death in the Family.
Okay.
And so that way you can have the effect of it. Okay. Does that sound good?
Yeah. All right.
Okay, but no, I completely agree with you. I would not put like
real world.
So especially because like the difference between Marvel and DC is that Marvel is the world right outside your window, where it's like everything takes place in an actual country, minus like Latveria and shit like that.
Yeah,
but, you know, that's beside the point.
That's more like MCU.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Well, Latveria is where Doctor Doom.
Yeah.
That's his kingdom.
Well, what's the
Sokovia?
Sokovia.
Yeah. But like Gotham or DC has like Gotham, Metropolis, Coast City, Central City. Like they're like fake fucking cities.
Yeah.
So you have so many fake cities in the DC universe that Earth has to be like double its normal size.
Yeah, and then they also still have
all the normal shit. Like New York still exists.
Yeah, I mean, New York's literally mentioned in this comic. Yeah.
So I don't know. I agree that I don't think they should have put real world stuff. Now they could probably just make up shit and just say like, oh, bad stuff's happening. Yeah.
More.
But no, I agree with you.
I don't know. It's just in hindsight.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Probably wouldn't have put that in there.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't have. So yeah, Dr. Fate is just running amok, and that's when we get introduced to everyone's favorite fucking team, the all-star hitters, the biggest group of heroes ever, Justice League International.
Is that maybe I'm wrong. Is that Red Tornado?
No. You're talking the guy with the yellow face?
Yeah, I have no fucking clue.
No, that is Mr. Miracle.
Who the fuck is that?
He's awesome, first off.
Is he?
Yes, he is. Mr. Miracle is...
This is the first time Mr. Miracle's ever been relatively even close to being in my stratosphere of knowledge. So it's a fucking miracle that he's fucking around, I guess.
His name is Mr. Miracle.
Okay.
He is a new god. Do you know what a new god is?
Look at me. Do I look like a person who knows what a new god is?
Do you know who Darkseid is?
Yes.
Darkseid is a new god.
Oh,
so
okay.
There's New Genesis, which has Highfather and all the good guys.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's Darkseid and Apocalypse with all the bad guys. So like Highfather has Orion, who is actually Darkseid's son. But there was a treaty where they traded sons, and so Highfather gave Darkseid Scott Free, who is the name, that's his actual name.
Scott Free is his actual name?
Well, it's because his superpower, okay, all right.
Is he gets away scot-free?
His superpower, Mr. Miracle's superpower is that he can escape any trap. That's his superpower.
That...
His name is Scott Free.
I don't even... Sometimes, when I hear about comic book characters like this, the guy's name is Scott Free.
Yeah.
And his ability is to get away from any trap scot free.
Yeah.
It makes me question what writers do in the writing room.
Well, this was made by Jack Kirby.
So he was probably in the middle of like smoking his old man pipe and banging broads back in the fucking 40s.
Yeah, I forget when the New Gods were created.
I don't fucking know, but
I think they were created in like the 50s.
Doing bumps of cocaine.
But like, yeah, no, Jack Kirby created all the New Gods and shit. But like, yeah, you have New Genesis, which is Highfather, Orion, all of them. Mm-hmm. And then you have Apocalypse with Darkseid, Granny Goodness, Big Barda, Desaad, those characters. And in order to basically create an alliance between, or not alliance, but like a treaty between the two planets or the two worlds, they traded sons.
Yeah.
So Scott Free eventually gets out and he meets Big Barda and they end up falling in love and becoming superheroes, and they escape Apocalypse, that kind of shit. It's a big story. We'll cover that stuff at some point. I feel like New Gods is a little bit outside of the sphere of like what you can handle right now.
Yeah, I'm barely handling Dr. Fate right now. So but also Guy Gardner. I did, right?
You knew that.
I did know that.
You did know that.
Martian Manhunter, and then the big cheese himself, the Phantom Stranger.
Yeah.
No, but also Batman shows
Let's
up.
be honest, Batman is only here by association. So
he's here because he had to sign the permission slips for them to go on a field trip.
So this is a really weird time in Justice League's history because this is the mid 80s and the Justice League doesn't really exist anymore. So like when you think of Justice League, you think of like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, all that kind of stuff. Well, at this point, Superman kind of was like, I really don't want to be a part of the Justice League. And so he just kind of leaves. Wonder Woman's like, I don't really want to be a part of the Justice League. I got other stuff to deal with. So she just kind of leaves. And then, like, Hal Jordan's like, well, I got to go to space. I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
And Flash is like, well, I'm dead. So, because, again, this takes place right after Crisis, and Barry Allen dies. So right now there technically isn't a Flash because Wally West is the Flash now. But that's
Just
up in
like
the air.
Guy Gardner is not a real Green Lantern.
I mean, he is. He's wearing the ring. He is the backup Green Lantern if Hal Jordan ever became evil. Because Guy Gardner's the second Green Lantern.
I get that, but let's be honest.
Yeah.
He's not a real Green Lantern.
Well, I mean, yeah, he does lose his powers eventually. I think shortly after this, he loses his powers because he's an asshole. He then...
Look at his bowl cut.
Yeah.
I understand why he's pissed off.
He then steals Sinestro's Cordian ring, the first Yellow Lantern ring, and renames himself to Guy Gardner. That's his superhero name, Guy Gardner. He wears the same type of like Letterman jacket, but instead of it being green, it's like just denim, and it just has a big ass G on it.
So bottom line, he was a football player in high school, peaked in high school.
Yeah.
Somehow came across a Green Lantern ring. It somehow chose him.
You literally know his backstory. That is his backstory.
You're fucking joking.
No, that's his backstory.
Oh my gosh.
Like, he had an abusive father, but that was about it.
I mean, don't most football players?
I mean, yeah.
I'm kidding. Jokes.
So, yeah, no. Right now, the Justice League is a little, let's just say, not up to snuff.
Yeah.
Especially here in a couple years when Doomsday is about to tear ass through all of their costumes and just absolutely show them what it means to be a Justice Leaguer.
I will say, for like the 2 panels Batman's in, he looks pretty cool.
Yeah, he's cool. Keith Giffen knows how to fucking draw a Batman.
Yeah.
But no, it is a cool team. Like, I like it when they don't use all the first stringers. They use a lot of the second stringers.
Didn't we see Phantom Stranger in the Wolverine comic when he gets possessed?
No.
Who was the one that showed up?
Wolverine's in Marvel.
Oh.
I think we need to cancel the podcast.
You know what? I'm gonna have to resign. Here's my nerd card. Here's all my personal belongings.
Yep. Go ahead and give me that wallet too.
Yeah, I'm broke, so sure, have at it.
No, I don't remember who we saw in that
It
book.
was a dude in a fucking fedora that looks spectral. I mean, I'm telling you, there's a guy that looks almost exactly like him, which, knowing the track records of Marvel and DC, they probably do have a carbon copy somewhere.
Yeah, probably.
Don't judge me.
So yeah, the Phantom Stranger. Now, we have been so sidetracked. So yes, the Justice League International get introduced in this story, and they essentially are like, oh, hey, something fucky is going on. What the hell? Like, we got to get involved. And that's when Phantom Stranger shows up. Now, Phantom Stranger is a magic kind of character. Yeah. He's kind of like a servant to, like, God, that kind of shit. Almost like the Spectre.
Yeah, I kind of put him in the same boat as the Mysterious Stranger from Fallout. Kinda.
If I think the Mysterious Stranger from Fall, is he like mystic or whatever?
I don't know. He just appears and helps kill shit,
and then he disappears.
But they both wear the same fucking hat.
That's really it. That's just the category. Really you just gotta put him in. So yeah, the Phantom Stranger. This episode has gone off the wall.
I don't care. This is fucking hilarious.
So the Phantom Stranger essentially shows up and gives the Justice League the lowdown on what's going on.
Yeah.
And Batman's like, oh, we got to get involved.
I will say I do really hope they bring back in modern comics the whole, like, when a new character appears, like, on the page, that they just announce themselves.
Yeah.
Like, it's cheesy as shit, but like kind of part of me is like,
I think they still kind of do that, but it's very rare.
I think they need to bring it back. That's like, I'm not even really joking about that.
Just so that way somebody who's never read the comic before can be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and then like they can like wiki.
Yeah, like, all right, who's this person?
Yeah.
Oh my god,
I didn't wiki the Phantom Stranger.
No, I know you didn't.
That's what you're for.
That's what I'm for. Yeah, I mean, the Phantom Stranger is like not a cool hero, but let's continue on. I'm kidding. Phantom Stranger is cool, and he probably has a massive following. I don't read a whole lot of stories.
There somewhere.
Yeah. That's kind of the big thing with like Marvel and DC is that there's so many characters that not all of them are going to get used all the time.
Phantom Stranger fans are out there, but they're kind of like the character.
Yeah.
They don't exist. They're phantoms.
So yeah, Phantom Stranger gives them the lowdown, while at the same time, Kent Nelson is giving Linda the lowdown on what's going on. We're kind of getting two perspectives of what's going on. He gives her the whole like what happened with him and his father, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it seems like, or at least the question posed is Naboo's grip is loosening on Nelson. And, and that's why he's starting to like kind of have more independence of his own emotions.
Yeah, and he's starting to grieve the death of his father because he never got to. We get some really good art of Naboo's like mouth thing coming out of Nelson's stomach.
Yeah,
Naboo just seems so evil, and I love that they like in one panel we see Naboo's smile, and then when we turn to the next panel, we get kind of the same smile but from Typhon.
To show
that like the Lords of Order and the Lords of Chaos aren't really that much different. So speaking of which, Dr. Fate and Typhon, or I guess Stoner and Typhon, are confronted by the Justice League plus Phantom Stranger. And Batman, he's like, all right, it's time for me to pull out my like big dick card because I'm the only real Justice Leaguer on this team. And he's essentially like, you're going to jail. And then they throw up on Batman and erase the top half of his fucking body.
His legs.
It's just his legs.
Not even like waist or anything. It's literally just the two legs.
And Mr. Miracle are like, oh my God.
Dude, I put in my notes. What did I say? I was like, oh, holy fucking shit. Batman just got vaporized. It's because he didn't have enough prep time.
Nope, no prep time. I don't think any amount of prep time could have helped you with this, Bruce. Let's be honest. Yeah, but fucking Mr. Miracle is like, oh.
He got away scot-free.
He got away scot-free. He didn't get hit. Hey, he can escape any trap.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, I told you he's a cool character. I love Mr. Miracle.
Better than Batman.
Better than Batman.
He didn't get thrown up on.
Yep. So he's technically better than Batman now.
See, Mr. Miracle doesn't need prep time.
Yeah. So Guy Gardner gets pissed.
Yeah.
And he charges. He's screaming Batman because that's his friend, coworker. He charges at Dr. Fate. And when he hits him, he goes through the other side of Dr. Fate as bones.
Yep. And
he is obliterated. And Martian Manhunter and Mr. Miracle are like, what the fuck just happened?
And I think Phantom Stranger is like, don't worry, they're not dead.
Yeah.
He just sent them back. And I'm like, Batman's legs are right there. What do you mean?
Yeah, dude, Guy Gardner's looking at the Phantom Stranger like, you must be fucking stupid because those are bones and fucking legs on the ground right now. What do you mean they got sent back to the tower?
My lantern ring's literally off to find the next person. What do you mean?
Fucking. So yeah, Phantom Stranger essentially tells them like they're fine. Your friends are fine. They're just back home hanging out. Don't ignore the fucking bones and legs on the ground. And Phantom Stranger says like, I think you two should just go home.
Mr. Miracle escapes.
Yeah, Mr. Miracle says, say less. And Actually, Mr. Miracle is, I think, the one that's like, fuck no. Like, they just killed our friends. And Martian Manhunter, I think, is the voice of reason, says, you can't handle this, Scott. Let me tell you, out of all the powers that are really going to help us in this situation, escaping a trap is not going to work.
Yeah.
And I'm basically Green Superman. Let's leave. So they get out of there. I will say, you know, Phantom Stranger goes on this huge like monologue about how there are different levels to order and like fate and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, you know, Dr. Fate belongs on his level, I belong on mine, and you belong on yours. Essentially saying like there is a hierarchy of power, you know, not like the Rock's hierarchy of power for Black Adam, just hierarchy of power. And superheroes belong on their own hierarchy. You know, that kind of deal. So they get out of there and they, you know, Phantom Stranger and Typhon have their big ass fight. At the same time, Eric has reappeared and he is talking with Linda. And this is kind of what you were mentioning earlier, where she sees him and she has this look in her eyes.
And she runs up to him and like hugs him. I will say there's a cool panel where it shows them black and white, like from a distance,
like two halves,
like silhouettes.
Yeah,
and they're at a distance. And then next panels, it's like one of his eyes, and then like Naboo's kind of the thing they've been using for Naboo,
the red energy or the orange energy,
in the other eye, and then she mirrors that. Which was really cool. Again, like as much as I've been kind of like joking around being like, this is an acid trip on a comic page, the art is super interesting.
Keith Giffen knocks it out of the park. Yeah, I think he does really good.
I highly compliment the art, even if like there's a lot going on, which made it kind of hard to follow. Yeah. Doesn't mean it wasn't exceptionally done. Yeah. It was really good.
Now, this is where you begin to lose me just a bit story-wise, where they embrace, and Linda says, I understand now. After all these years, I understand. Yeah. And at first, you're kind of like, I wonder what she means by that. We'll find out later. So, Eric is essentially, he is ready to take on the mantle of, you know, Dr. Fate.
Because he does say that Typhon tried to break him. Yeah. And, like, you know, basically make him unusable by Naboo. Yeah. But he actually made him stronger, essentially.
Yeah, that's hand wavy in my opinion. Yeah. You just kind of have to go along with it. Yeah. And Nelson is just trying to essentially talk him out of it, saying like, you have so much of your life left to live. Like, don't let Naboo take that from you. And Naboo is trying to basically tell Nelson to shut the fuck up. At the same time, Typhon and the Phantom Strangers fight is going on, and Typhon gets the upper hand,
and like the fucking Predator rips his fucking spine.
Mortal Kombat. Oh my god! Rips his spine and everything out, and he says that he kills the Phantom Stranger, but according to the Phantom Stranger, you can get turned into fucking dust and bones and end up back home.
Yeah, and just be okay. He just went back.
Yeah.
Yeah, back to the fucking abstract existence that is life, I guess.
Yeah. So, and at the end of that chapter, their fight ended them up in Egypt.
Yeah, at the pyramid.
Yeah, which is, you know, kind of cool because it brings it back around to Dr. Fate.
Yeah, you know, to Nelson especially, yeah.
And the main characters, Eric, Linda, and Nelson, are all there at the pyramid waiting for Typhon, and they are about to begin their big final battle, which Typhon essentially is saying like he is encompassing the entire planet at this point, making everything go crazy and mad. And Eric, all right, so this is where it does start to officially lose me a little bit, where I get lost in the fight. Because it's so abstract on what's going on, because you see mouths and writhing tentacles and stuff encompass Eric, and like cosmic shit is flying around everywhere, and they're talking about how like Eric's gonna die, but no, he's okay, that kind of deal. And in this moment, Nelson kind of realizes something about Naboo that he didn't know before. And I guess for me to simplify it as best as possible, he realizes that in order to fuse or to become Dr. Fate, it doesn't require one host, it requires two.
Yeah.
It requires one person to control the helmet and the other to control the amulet. But the only way that you can do that is if the two people are truly in love with each other.
And guess who he surmises are the two people for Naboo?
Yeah.
Linda, who was Eric's stepmom.
Yeah.
And Eric.
The recently aged up 10-year-old.
Yes.
Apparently she's been his stepmom for a while. I totally overlooked that understanding thing. She's been his stepmom for years at this point.
Yeah.
So Nelson essentially tells Linda, go to him, go to Eric, become Dr. Fate. And, when they become Dr. Fate, they beat the shit out of Typhon. And in this moment, Nelson, obviously, he's gonna die because he no longer has Naboo in him. And that's what happens. He fucking dies. I'm kind of like glossing over this because the last chapter is just wild, monologuing and fighting and all kinds of stuff.
And Typhon gives up Stoner. He releases Stoner, like this fucking husk of a human being, and it's basically like, is like defeated, but also just is like, I concede.
Yeah, he doesn't die. He just leaves.
Yeah,
and Naboo or I guess it's not Naboo, it's Eric, because he's the one in control now. He essentially says like, the war, like we've won the battle, but the war has just been put on hold.
Yeah.
And that's when they take the time to mourn Kent Nelson. And we get this pretty interesting scene. This is where the confusion comes in with the speech bubbles, where we see all this crazy looking energy in the Lords of Fortune, in the Lords of Order's realm. I've been playing Dragon Age.
Yeah,
sorry.
I know. Me too. It's okay. I understand.
And they all are represented by like blobs of different colored energy, but
they look like single cell organisms.
Yeah, but their speech bubbles don't match the color that they are, and so I don't know who's necessarily talking.
I think maybe it's supposed to be like it doesn't really matter who's talking because they're all of one mind.
Yeah. And they essentially they shit on Naboo and they say like, oh, you abandoned us and you think you're so fucking high and mighty. And Naboo's essentially telling them like, it's our job to protect the mortal realm from chaos, and maybe you guys are the ones that are scared, and that you guys are giving into chaos, but I never will. And he chooses to exile himself from the Lords of Order. And when they shoot him back into the mortal realm, he skyrockets and crashes into Kent Nelson's grave.
Yeah.
And then we cut back to Eric and Linda's apartment. And they are talking about Eric staying at the Tower of Fate.
Yeah.
And, Linda is essentially like, oh no, the tower was for Kent and Enza, but New York is our home. This is where you grew up. And
Linda all but confesses that even when
he was
a boy, she
that's what I was getting at.
Romantic feelings for him.
Yeah, she admits that she has been in love with Eric since he was 10.
Yeah.
Well, even younger than that.
Yeah, because he technically is 10. He's just in the body of a 25-year-old now.
Yeah, and they go to kiss.
And Eric's like, no.
Not yet.
Give me at least like a year. Let me be 11.
Yeah, he says, I'm not ready just yet. And that's when it's revealed that Naboo is now inhabiting Kent Nelson's body.
Yep.
And he's essentially going to act as the mentor to Eric Strauss.
Yeah.
And that is where the story ends.
Yeah.
Let me just say, what the fuck? Hold on. I'm not going to let this just get glossed over. What the fuck, J.M. DeMatteis? Why? What made you think it was okay to have a 10-year-old and his stepmom get together?
Okay, let me collect my thoughts here. Okay? Because quite frankly, after this drug fuel haze that was reading this comic book, I will say he was probably on drugs.
Yeah, probably.
I don't know. See, to me, it's the same idea of like when, because we both watch anime. Stuff like that, and it's a hot debate, hot topic in anime community and stuff like that, like always, when it comes to like lolly characters and things like that. So to me, it's in the same vein of like, well, sure, he's 10 years old, but he's in a body of a 25-year-old, so it's okay, which... No, it's not.
Right.
I don't want to wave it away as to be like, well, it's the 80s, but you all have to also understand it is the 80s. And
I guess
if you think early 2000s is a vast departure from like today's like moral and ethics, you're going back another 20 years.
Right.
So like,
I can understand what you're saying. It's just, it's still so weird. Like, I would probably rank this as one of the creepiest, like, comic book relationships I've ever seen.
It's definitely the most creepy because, again, my scope is not.
And I'm not just talking about superhero comics. I'm just talking about comics in general.
Yeah.
It's creepy. And, like, while, yes, I agree with you, like, 80s sensibilities compared to now, completely different. You can't even put them in the same category. But still, it's the late 80s. It's not like people were marrying 10-year-olds left and right in the US in the 80s. It's still something that's considered like taboo, and I just don't, because again, they don't say that she developed feelings for him afterwards. They straight up say that she's had feelings for him
for a while.
In the last, before he was 10.
In the last page, when they're in the New York apartment or whatever, or she literally says, I felt like for having these feelings, I was crazy. And then they like get close, like they're going to kiss. And that's when Eric is like, no.
Bitch, you are crazy.
You are, by definition, insane.
Yeah, bitch, you are crazy. That's not, like, maybe you should have kept those feelings to yourself.
Yeah. I don't know.
I still overall enjoyed the story. It's just that right there kind of like it took me out of the story.
As far as the story goes, as far as the narrative goes and stuff, take it or leave it. I really was not like a huge fan. The thing that kept me interested and engaged and like page turning was the art.
Yeah.
Like I said, as much as I keep joking around that it's like this acid trip, the art is visually interesting and intriguing and very well done. And I mean, like, there's one panel where when Dr. Fate is fighting Typhon and he's hitting them with essentially like a madness beam, instead of it being like a ray, he's like shooting laughter out of his hand, which was really cool, I thought, and stuff like that. So like visually, it is a treat, hands down.
Yeah.
Story-wise, let's hope in modern day Dr. Fate, they've retconned the whole 10-year-old and Linda thing.
Well, at this point, it's a completely different character.
Good. Like, it should be.
Yeah.
Let's not have Linda around. And the fact that she's even allowed within fucking like 500 feet of a playground with children in it is beyond me.
Yeah. Hopefully she's not an official member of the Justice League because Jesus Christ, that shit is wild. I don't understand what J.M. DeMatteis was thinking about that because like I normally like the stuff that he writes.
Yeah.
I mean, he's written some Spider-Man that I like. He's written a few things, and I just don't.
Left field.
Yeah, it's so out of left field and so weird that like I kind of wish there was an interview. Maybe there is, and I just haven't found it. I wish there was an interview with him about this comic, just asking like, what was your thought process behind this?
So like, and the thing is like, take the two parts separate. Having Naboo or Dr. Fate need to be like two people, or having, you know, a child be like the wearer of the helmet and stuff like that. Those things separate, totally fine. You know, like if you chose one or the other, they work on their own. But then putting them together is where the conflict rises.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like you can't have like this 10-year-old become this superhero and then also be like, oh yeah, you need a romantic tie with someone.
Yeah.
That in that way you can carry the mantle of Dr. Fate. Like last year they just got out of diapers. Like what? They don't even know what love is.
Yeah. They
were playing with blocks a couple months ago. They just got their first Lego set. Like,
yeah. Yeah.
what do you mean?
I don't know. I'm, not to be too spoilerific on our next DC book, but I hope Hellblazer's a little bit more our sauce, seeing as that we both kind of like Constantine more anyways.
Yeah.
But that's an episode for the future.
I gotta find it, but I'm gonna watch Keanu Reeves' Constantine before I read.
Nicole loves that. Yeah.
I've seen it before.
Yeah.
And I remember liking it, but it's been forever since I've seen it, so I'm gonna watch that and then read it.
Yeah. But I mean, I think that's basically all I have left.
Yeah, that's all I got to.
Yeah. So I guess we'll go ahead and just intro this out. The very, very quick episode today, but yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Still enjoyed it for the most part. You're not going to be able to find it in trade. I know that. You can read it on the DC Infinite app. That's really the only way you're going to be able to read it. So
if you want some pretty visuals, go for a read. But unless you're like a diehard Dr. Fate fan, which with this whole Linda thing,
I think the best part of that book was the Justice League part.
With Batman getting vaporized.
With him and Guy Gardner just getting shit on. I 100% agree.
I busted out laughing when I fucking
did too.
And I saw Batman get vaporized. I was like, fuck, holy shit.
Yeah, I thought Batman was dead, and I kind of had to do a double take, and I was like, did Batman die at some point in the 80s and I just don't remember? Because the last time I checked, the first time he fucking died was in like the early 2000s.
But yeah, this was a visual treat, but that's about as much as I'd throw it up there for.
Yeah, I agree. Well, all right, everybody. This has been Comics with Friends, the bi-weekly podcast where two best buds get together, read a comic, talk about what they liked about the comic, what they didn't like about the comic.
Tell a lot of jokes.
And yeah, we will catch you in the next episode. But until then, if you get vaporized, just remember you can always respawn back at home. Bye-bye.
Bye.